using in the chairs.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. This past week, a monster storm named Claudia slammed into the United Kingdom, and let me tell you, it caught pretty much everybody off guard with just how brutal it turned out to be. What started as a quick-moving rainstorm quickly blew up into a full-blown flooding nightmare. In some parts of the country, more than 3 inches of rain came down in a single day. That's the kind of deluge that completely overwhelms drains and sewers that just weren't designed for it. Down in southern England and across Wales, rivers jumped their banks. Major roads disappeared under brown floodwater, and whole towns woke up to a totally different world overnight. But the place that really got hammered the hardest? A little village called UAS Harold. Normally it's got this calm, peaceful creek running through it until Claudia showed up. In a matter of minutes, that creek turned into an absolute beast. Basements filled up like bathtubs, storefronts were underwater, and families were racing to get their cars and anything valuable up to higher ground before it was too late. Phones were blowing up with emergency alerts, local radio couldn't stop talking about it, and by that point it was crystal clear. This wasn't just another fall storm. This was Mother Nature sending a loud and clear message about what's coming down the road. And man, I really hope that rain doesn't start pouring again. Yeah, it did. By Friday night, Claudia wasn't letting up, she was doubling down. Across the Midlands and up into northern England, weather stations were clocking 3, 4, even pushing 5 inches of rain in under 24 hours in some spots. And the scariest part? The rain just kept stacking up, band after band after band, soaking the ground completely before the real heavy stuff even hit. Once the soil couldn't take another drop, every new downpour had nowhere to go but straight into people's homes and streets. This one's gonna be talked about for a long time, guys. And honestly, it's probably just a preview of more extreme weather heading everyone's way. Here's a completely rewritten, copyright-free narration script in natural, conversational American English, perfect for a US YouTube audience. This is only the spoken part, what you'd actually record as voiceover, paced like a dramatic storm/flood video. By midnight, more than 150 flood warnings were lighting up phones all across the region. Quiet little creeks that nobody ever thinks about suddenly turned into monsters. Take one small stream, normally just a trickle you could step over. Overnight, it exploded out of its banks and started roaring through town. People in one hard-hit neighborhood said it sounded like a freight train was coming. This deep, constant rumble as water shoved trees, branches, mud, even big chunks of road downstream faster than anyone had ever seen. Streetlights were flickering like they were about to give up. Knee-deep water turned regular intersections into raging rivers you couldn't even see the bottom of. First responders were out there with flares and barricades trying to mark the spots where the road just disappeared under the flood. Towing companies were completely slammed, hundreds of calls in just a couple hours. Cars stalled out in the middle of the street, people stranded on little islands of dry pavement, bridges washed out. Officials were begging everyone, stay home, don't drive, because it only takes about a foot of moving water to sweep a full-size car right off the road like it's a toy. This wasn't some quick thunderstorm that blows through in 20 minutes. This system just parked itself overhead and kept reloading, rain after rain after rain. What started as a soggy Friday night turned into a full-blown regional emergency that just wouldn't quit. When the sun came up Saturday morning, one small town looked like a completely different place. A creek that runs through the middle of it jumped more than 3 feet overnight and poured straight into people's homes and businesses. Main Street, underwater, parking lots, lakes, that cute little strip where everybody walks their dog in the morning? Now it's got lawn chairs, trash cans, and kids' bikes floating by. At the family-owned fish and chips place right on the corner, water came rushing through the front door so fast nobody had time to do much. Employees were yelling, unplugging fryers, watching boxes of frozen food bob across the floor like boats. Outside, neighbors were in panic mode, grabbing keys, trying to move their cars up the hill before the water got any higher, flashlights swinging everywhere in the dark. Emergency crews were going house to house, knocking on doors. Grab your meds, your paperwork, warm clothes, anything you need for a couple days. We've got to get you out. They turned the community center into a shelter overnight. Volunteers passing out blankets, coffee, those little battery lanterns, families just sitting there in shock, watching the water creep closer on their phones. Here's the rewritten, copyright-free narration script, written in natural, conversational American English, perfect for a YouTube voiceover about the devastating flooding in a small US town named Harold here to keep it generic. Only the spoken parts are included, no timestamps or on-screen text directions. Hey everyone, welcome back. What started as heavy rain quickly turned into an absolute nightmare for the little town of Harold. Overnight, streets disappeared under fast-moving floodwater. Hidden potholes, floating logs, chunks of debris, and these sneaky strong currents made every single drive a total gamble with your life. Local authorities didn't mess around. They threw up barricades at all the main roads leading into the flooded zones because one wrong move and a routine trip could end in tragedy. By mid-morning, this wasn't just a flooding problem anymore. Harold was literally fighting to stay connected, to keep people safe, and to hold itself together as things kept getting worse. When the rain finally let up for a minute, that's when everyone started seeing just how bad it really was. Whole neighborhoods looked like a war zone. Huge tree branches everywhere, mangled metal fences ripped out of the ground, junk scattered across yards like a tornado had come through underwater. Inspectors said the water got 4, sometimes 5 feet deep in the lowest parts of town. That's high enough to smash through windows, warp hardwood floors, and totally destroy furnaces and water heaters in dozens of houses. Basements? Forget it, they were swimming pools full of nasty floodwater. When families finally got back inside their homes, it broke your heart. Refrigerators tipped over, couches and beds ruined, priceless family photos stuck to the walls with that thick, muddy slime. One homeowner told me it looked like someone threw everything they owned into a giant blender and hit puree. Businesses got hammered too. The corner convenience store? Pretty much everything on the shelves was a total loss once the water rushed in. Electrical panels fried, ATMs drowned, freezers dead, cash registers toast. Cleanup crews are already warning that a bunch of these places are going to need brand new wiring before they can even think about reopening. And the infrastructure? Oof, big chunks of roadway just collapsed. Drainage pipes were clogged solid with mud and broken branches. At least 18 power transformers blew out across the area, so parts of town are still sitting in the dark. With more rain in the forecast and the river still rising, folks here are bracing themselves. Because as bad as it looks right now, a lot of people are scared this is only the beginning. If you drive down any street here in the U.S. Herald area, every flooded road and wrecked house has its own story. Pure fear, split-second decisions, people just trying to stay alive. When Dwellis Brook jumped its banks, families were scrambling, grabbing meds, important papers, a couple changes of clothes, then wading out through water up to their knees to get to higher ground. So many people told me about that same terrifying moment. You hear the water roaring closer, and suddenly you realize your house isn't safe anymore. Parents were hoisting little kids up on their shoulders, legs shaking from the adrenaline, not even feeling how cold the water was. Older folks were trying to make it down slick stairs and across walkways that were completely underwater. Firefighters, volunteers, even neighbors who'd never met before, they were locking arms, making human chains to pull people through currents that were moving way too fast. One teacher here told me, "I've never seen strangers turn into family that fast." In the first hour alone, almost 120 people poured into the emergency shelters. Inside the village hall, you've got kids wrapped up in blankets, coloring like crazy to keep their minds off everything, while the grown-ups just stare at their phones, refreshing the radar, hoping the worst is over. For a lot of these folks, that shelter is the only place they've got left to go tonight. It's heavy, guys. This is what a real flood looks like when it hits home. Whole basements were completely underwater by that point, and a couple of houses had literally slid right off their foundations. You could see the shock on people's faces everywhere. Some folks just lost it the moment they saw what happened to their homes. Others were standing there in tears, saying they were just thankful to still be breathing. The speed of it all hit everybody like a truck. 1 minute life was normal, the next minute everything you worked for was floating away or buried in mud. It really drove home how fast things can change and how little control we actually have sometimes. Even as the rain kept coming down and the flood threat wasn't over yet, one thing was obvious. This wasn't just about fixing roofs and drywall. This town was staring at a trauma that was going to take way longer to heal than any house ever would. But man, the way people jumped into action was something else. Regular neighbors, volunteer fire crews, you name it, everybody mobilized crazy fast. Firefighters were out there in inflatable boats within minutes, pulling people to safety and roping off spots where the ground was washing away underneath you. Local cops shut down roads that were basically rivers at that point, keeping more cars from getting swallowed. Utility crews were wading through waist-deep water, street by street, hunting down live power lines you couldn't even see under the surface. As night fell, over 60 first responders from all the neighboring towns came pouring in. They rolled up with generators, portable pumps, medical supplies, whatever they could grab to help. People from the little villages nearby showed up too, dropping off hot food, warm blankets, cases of bottled water, everything they could spare, straight to the community hall that had turned into a makeshift shelter overnight. One local diner even fired up their kitchen and cooked more than 150 hot meals, loaded them into those big aluminum trays, and sent them out to families who'd escaped the flood with literally nothing but the clothes on their backs. But honestly, the real heart of this town wasn't just the big organized stuff. It was the little things that'll stick with you. You had teenagers wading waist-deep in freezing water just to help elderly neighbors grab their medicine from flooded houses. Farmers fired up their tractors at 3 a.m. to drag trees and debris off the roads so ambulances could get through. A bunch of off-duty nurses threw together a pop-up clinic right there in a parking lot, treating cuts, calming panic attacks, wrapping people up who were shaking from the cold. And through the whole night, with the rain still hammering down, nobody gave up. Nobody sat around feeling sorry for themselves. These folks looked out for each other. They toughed it out together. And even while the water was still rising, you could already tell the second it started going down, they were going to roll up their sleeves and rebuild. That's just who they are. As the sun came up over the little town of Herefordshire in the United States, the massive storm that hammered the area all night finally started moving north. But man, when the light hit, the destruction was unreal. This wasn't just a heavy rainstorm that ruined everybody's weekend. This was a full-on wake-up call, and it's one that every single one of us across the country needs to hear. Scientists have been saying it for years. Storms like this one, let's call her Claudia for the sake of the story, are getting wilder, stronger, and way more unpredictable. Warmer oceans are pumping extra energy into these systems, and the jet stream is doing all kinds of weird twists because of climate change. The end result? Storms that used to spread their rain out over a couple days now dump it all in just a few hours. Rivers that have handled floods for 100 years suddenly can't keep up. Drainage systems that cities built decades ago get completely overwhelmed. And people who always thought, it's never flooded here before, are watching their living rooms fill up with water. The folks in Herald learned the hard way that the old rules of weather just don't apply anymore. What happened there could happen in your town next, whether you're in the Midwest, the Southeast, the Northeast, or out on the West Coast. This storm wasn't an unlucky one-off. It was a preview of what's becoming the new normal, unless we start taking it seriously. When the rain started coming down in buckets, that quiet little stream turned into an absolute monster. It jumped its banks, tore through streets, and flooded entire neighborhoods in a matter of hours. Homes were damaged, cars were underwater, and people had to grab what they could and get out fast. Local leaders have been talking about fixing this kind of thing for years, beefing up flood walls, upgrading drainage, getting better early warning systems in place. After this storm, those conversations aren't just talk anymore. They have to happen, and they have to happen now. But here's the part that really got me. Even while the floodwaters were still high, something shifted. In living rooms lit by flashlight and candlelight, in school gyms turned into shelters, people stopped just talking about what they lost and started talking about what they're going to build back, stronger, smarter, and ready for whatever comes next. Yeah, Storm Claudia wrecked a lot of things, but it also woke everybody up. By the next morning, the water was finally dropping. Cleanup crews were out before sunrise, working under floodlights. Downtown, the UAS Herald building sat dark and quiet under a chilly November sky. Roads were cracked open, shop windows were boarded up, and if you walked down to the Dooley's Brook now, you'd never guess what it did just a day earlier. It looked harmless again, almost peaceful. Mother Nature just sent a serious reminder. Even the smallest brook can turn into a beast when the skies open up. And when that happens, we don't just rebuild, we rebuild better. For the people who actually went through Storm Claudia that night, it's one of those moments that's burned into their memory forever. It completely changed how safe they used to feel in their own homes, how they think about risk, and even their trust that the seasons are still predictable. All across the UK, thousands of us saw the videos. Houses underwater, bridges wiped out, rescue boats racing through streets that used to be dry, and the same question kept popping up, is this just normal now? If a monster storm can turn a sleepy little village upside down in a matter of minutes, what does that say about bigger towns, cities, or whole regions? And for those of us watching from the States, this hits close to home too. It's not just over there. We've got our own version of this story, The flooding in Vermont, the atmospheric rivers hammering California, wildfires that explode overnight. Same pattern, different zip code. These extreme events are getting stronger, coming on faster, and hitting in ways nobody saw coming. Nights like the one Storm Claudia brought make it crystal clear how fragile things really are, and how much work we still have ahead to get ready for what's next. If these videos help you stay in the loop, stay aware, and honestly stay a little more prepared, go ahead and smash that like button, share it with someone who needs to see it, and hit subscribe so you don't miss the next update when severe weather strikes anywhere in the world. Stay safe out there, guys.